Welcome to the Weights and Plates podcast. I am Robert Santana. I am your host, along with Trent Jones, my co-host.
Hey, what's going on, man?
How's it going, dude?
It's going. This is the time of planting here in the Jones household, at the Jones homestead. So we've been busting ass out in the garden and getting all of our crops going.
Now over here, this is a time where all that dies, what little we have.
Yeah.
Have
you hit triple digits yet?
Oh, yeah. Last couple days. That's game. Summer is here.
Oh, my gosh.
It's all good, though. I don't mind it.
So you're like 100 degrees. You're like, oh, that's not bad. That's just early summer.
It's a nice cool day,
summer.
It's a nice cool day. Nice breezy day. I grew up in Chicago, and I would much rather deal with extreme heat over extreme cold any day.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. Have you seen that video of the guy? I'm pretty sure he was in Chicago. This just like a couple of years ago. There was some cold snap, and there's a guy that walked, like he put like a pan of water. He filled up a pan with water, and he walked outside, and he threw it up in the air, and it freezes.
Oh, yeah.
It basically freezes instantly as soon as he throws it in the air.
That was a polar vortex, It sounds like.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll happen.
Yeah.
Here you can fry an egg.
I'm good.
You can fry an egg on the sidewalk when it's $1.20 out.
I believe it.
People have made videos of that.
I believe it.
I've seen both extremes, man.
Mm.
So, today we're going to talk about how to measure your progress when you are, wanting to change your body composition, whether, you're trying to lose some weight or build some muscle mass. I want to talk about how to do that without, going completely batshit crazy, because that seems to be a problem.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Yes, I'm excited to talk about why I hate the scale.
Yeah.
It's the crappiest tool, I think, for body composition.
I mean, it's often used incorrectly, and
yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Misinterpreted.
It's not the tool's fault. Yeah, it's not the tool's fault.
I mean, let's start with weight.
The user.
I guess since we're bringing up the scale, let's start with weight loss, right? So,
okay,
the common issue that I run into is that people get on the scale, they get a weight, right? Then they, at some point, and this often happens early, they develop this expectation that every time they step on the scale, their weight's supposed to go down. Every single time. So then they end up weighing themselves every day, and if it goes any direction except down, they lose their shit. Like, what the hell? Why did it shoot up 0.3? And it's like, well, first of all, I don't know that 0.3 pounds is shooting up, quote unquote, but okay, it increased from where it was yesterday. So why did that happen? Well, there's a lot of reasons that can happen. You drank a bit of water before you went to bed, haven't peed yet. You ate a little bit more carbohydrates. You ate a little bit more salt. You shifted more of your calories into the evening hours. You're having a menstrual cycle if you're a female. Or, maybe you did eat a lot of calories. So what do you expect there? You can't get upset when you did something that's predictably going to lead to that result. But the point is, you're not gaining body fat in 24 hours. So even if you wanted an all-out binge, the amount is negligible.
Right.
So, I've had a guy gain 12 pounds in a day and lose it the next day,
Right. Yeah. Okay. So that right there is my main problem with the scale, is that people get really tied up in these micro movements of their body weight. And that assumes right there that they're weighing themselves all the time. And that I think is one of my primary problems with using body weight as a metric for tracking progress, is that I don't know many people that can honestly, that are wanting to lose weight, they can honestly get on the scale on whatever their day that they were planning to measure is. Let's say it's Wednesday. They're going to get on the scale Wednesday at the same time and then not check it until the next Wednesday, or however often they've decided to measure. It's going to be like every day, maybe multiple times per day. And then you get tied up in these tiny little swings. You're like, oh, it's 0.3 up. It's like, oh, I'm like 2 pounds heavier. Oh my God, it's all going wrong.
It shot up.
It's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
I don't even know how accurate the damn scale is. Like, how much of an error bar is there every single time you get on there?
I don't know.
I don't know.
My position is this, once or twice a week is probably fine. If you're
Yeah.
weighing yourself in the same day under the same conditions every single week and you're eating consistently and training consistently, you should see a predictable result. So if you're in a calorie deficit for 7 days
Yeah.
and you weigh yourself at the first day and the 7th day or the 8th day, you should see the weight go down. It should go down. If you're a novice, that might not happen because your total body water is changing. You're putting on some muscle mass too. So you have different compartments going in different directions. If you're a novice, you just started training, you're putting on more muscle glycogen. You're adding more water weight. That happens almost immediately. And then at some point, you start adding more muscle mass. So you might not have linear weight loss, even though you may, in fact, be losing body fat every week.
Right. Yeah, because muscles are a big sink for glycogen. And so if you build a large amount of muscle mass over the course of, like, let's say a year, then, you're going to have more, you're going to have a bigger tank, if you will, for absorbing carbohydrates into your muscles.
Absolutely. Which means that more body weight, right?
Yeah, and water, right? What's you said it before in the show. What's the ratio of water to glycogen that's stored in the muscle?
Yeah, for every gram of glycogen that you deposit in your muscles, you're depositing 3 grams or mLs of water. So it's a 3-to-1 ratio. So you're going to see that compartment increase while the fat compartment decreases, and you might have a net stability in your body weight, even though your waist circumference is shrinking. That's one reason for that.
Yeah. Now, and water's heavy. Water's very dense and heavy.
Yeah. And if you have a lot of weight to lose, yes, in general, your weight should move in the negative direction. That should happen,
Yeah.
And if you're taking multiple anthropometric measurements, so you're taking weight, waist circumference, hip circumference, thigh circumference, whatever you're measuring, and skin folds, and nothing's moving, you're probably, eating too much, So there's something to be said in general, in the aggregate, if you have large amounts of body weight to lose, what number on the scale should go down week to week, but day-to-day fluctuations are completely irrelevant. It just tells you how much your body water can swing. It doesn't say anything about your rate of fat loss because that takes about a week to come off.
Sure. Yeah. And I've noticed too, especially with the larger the person, the bigger the swings in water weight that you're going to see.
Oh yeah.
I'm training a guy right now who's I think he's 6'6", and he weighs about 315, give or take. So he's a big dude. He's not fat at all. He's just a really big, jacked dude. And so I wouldn't be surprised if his weight, I don't know for a fact that, we don't track his body weight currently, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's plus or minus 5, 6, 7 pounds on a given day, just from water weight. He's a big fucking dude. He weighs, more than 50% than I do.
Absolutely.
And I know my body weight will swing a few pounds plus minus.
And if you're cutting body weight very low and your carbohydrate intake is very low, you're going to be subject to larger swings as well, even if you're a smaller person, because you're partially, or in some cases, these keto people, you might be depleted of glycogen, or at least definitely partially at the very least, which means if you have a little bit more carb or a little bit more sodium, you're going to see a bigger swing than you would if you were eating maintenance level carbs,
Right. Yeah, good point.
If you go out in the sun and you sweat all day, you're going to see a big weight loss, which means the day after you're going to see a big weight gain. So you're going to celebrate one day and kill yourself the next. I mean, come on,
Right.
You can't expect the scale to move just because you stood on it. I mean, if that was the case, there wouldn't be a need for me or people that do my job. You just get on the scale and lose weight. That's almost what you're expecting. So it just creates this weird psychological thing where they're literally, I can't say it enough, as the expectation is I step on the scale goes down. Anything else is a failure. And then they take it as a personal failure, which becomes a psychological problem. And that's when I say you need to call somebody that deals with mental health, which is not me,
Right.
I'm a diet guy.
So, yeah, that's the thing about the scale, right? It's not the tool's fault. It's just a tool. Mm-hmm. It's misunderstanding what it's for. So when the scale tells you your body weight, that's all it's telling you. What you really want to know when you step on the scale is, what changed. And we have to go back to what's the goal here, right? We got to go back to what is the whole reason that you're trying to change your body composition. Most people that are trying to lose weight are trying to lose body fat specifically.
Absolutely.
So they're trying to get leaner. So what they ultimately want is not to lose body weight. That is just a symptom of getting leaner. They want to lose body fat. It's just that body fat tends to be harder to measure. Body weight is very easy to measure. But the thing is, what actually moves the scale can be a lot of things, which we just described, right? There are many, many things which can change your body weight. Many of them have nothing to do necessarily with losing body fat, which is the ultimate goal here, right? So the way that if the goal is to lose body fat, we have to measure it, I think, in multiple ways to know that we're getting closer to the goal or not.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we've come up with one good strategy. So for one, you want to measure infrequently, not frequently. You're going to drive yourself crazy if you measure it every day. Take it every week, maybe twice a week, beginning of the week, end of the week.
Sure.
Try not to take it on Monday because you probably ate differently on the weekend. That's going to alter your body weight.
Right. Especially if you went out to a restaurant.
Yeah.
Right.
Make sure that you're measuring it at the same time every time you measure it. Same time, same clothing or lack thereof. I typically don't wear anything when I weigh myself. And I do it first thing in the morning.
Okay, yeah, I was going to ask you because I always think that's pretty good, right?
Yeah.
So you wake up, you pee, and then you step on the scale. That's got to be pretty, consistent from week to week.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, there's no more standard condition than weighing yourself butt naked first thing in the morning.
Yeah.
So do it, so you do it that time, but then the following week you weigh yourself at the gym after you've worked out. You say, "Oh, I lost 4 pounds. That was cool." Okay, you can game the system for psychological satisfaction, but it doesn't mean something happened,
Right.
So no, don't do that. Same conditions every week, same days. And if you see a weird blip, then sure, weigh yourself one more time in a couple days, but you don't want to make it a habit to get on the scale all the time because you're going to develop that expectation that something is supposed to happen every time you get on the scale. The scale is not what causes you to lose weight. It's the food you eat. It's the work, the activity you perform,
Right.
So everything, and you don't want everything becoming about the scale. So that's one thing. The next thing, you could measure yourself. So if you store body fat in your midsection, that's one good place to measure. If you, want to measure skin folds, you're not going to get a super accurate measure of body fat, but you'll get a super accurate measure of that skin fold if the same person is doing it the same way every time.
Right. Yeah.
At least a consistent measurement, I should say, a reliable measurement, even if it's not 100% accurate. You can measure different limbs. If you tend to store fat in your arms, you can measure your arm circumference. So that's another way to do it. And then, you could do, DEXAs and, more precise instruments, supposedly.
Right.
If you want to go do bod pod or DEXA, but I find that they're not the greatest for big, giant trends. But, it's worth doing once in a while if you're into that. But what are we really trying to accomplish? You want to look different, or we want a number that a machine's spitting out to change, right?
Right. Yeah.
The same goes for the scale, right? And do you want the scale to move, or do you want to look better?
Yeah. Well, I think that's actually I want to hold off on this point, but I think people actually do want the scale to move.
Yeah.
They want to look better too, but they want the scale to say a certain number. That's very important to them. But let's hold on that point.
Yeah.
Yeah, so measurement, I think that's really good because it works both from a losing body fat standpoint, and it also works in the other direction. If you're, let's say, a novice and you're underweight, or maybe you're under-muscled, right? Maybe you fall into that skinny fat category we've talked about, and you need to gain muscle mass. Well, measuring your body at various points can be a great way to see that you're actually putting that muscle mass on.
Yep.
If you're a skinny, very underweight novice, then it's, you do want to see the scale going up on a regular basis. Yes. But especially if you're in that skinny fat category, it's really good to measure your waist, like you said. And then also I think like a couple of reasonable places are measure the chest underneath the armpits, measure the, maybe the quads, or you can do your hips too, basically on the biggest part around of your butt all the way across. And you can measure your biceps as well, because especially for that skinny fat person, that's the areas where that you probably don't have any muscle mass, and that you want to see those go up while your waist is staying roughly the same. roughly the same. Although you will put on a little bit, I'll just say this, I've seen this happen a bunch. Expect to, if you're going through the novice program and you get your deadlift and squat up to some good numbers, expect your waist to go up an inch or two, because you're adding muscle to your abdominal wall, and your spinal erectors are getting bigger, your obliques are getting bigger and thicker, so that will push out your whatever you've got around your stomach a little bit.
Yeah, and you're going to gain some body fat. That's just going to happen with weight gain.
Yeah, sure.
So on that topic, with weight gain, the problem I run into is these guys expect the scale to go up X amount of pounds to determine whether they're quote-unquote massing or building muscle correctly. And, there's guys, if you're 6 foot, 130 pounds, you need to gain weight pretty fast probably.
Right.
But, a lot of the time you get these modest-sized guys that are skinny fat, a little chubby maybe. And what I find is just eating to move the scale is a problem, whether you're losing weight or gaining weight. When you're gaining weight, it's very easy to get fat because let's say you're squatting 5 inches high and your squat's going nowhere, but you're just shoveling food down because you're like, I need 5,000 calories to weigh 200. Meanwhile, you're squatting 165,
Right.
So the metric of success when you are gaining weight is not the scale. Once again, it is the weight on the bar. The weight on the bar needs to go up.
Yeah,
and
right.
if the weight on the bar is not going up because you're not recovered, then you need to eat more food, and the scale will take care of itself. You will weigh more, you will get bigger, etc. But I wouldn't make your scale weight the metric unless you're very underweight.
Right. Yeah, I think it's probably more of a short-term tool, if I had to guess. Right. So, like, if you're where I was when I first started my linear progression, I was, I'm 5'8", 5'9", right in between those two numbers. And I think I weighed 155 pounds when I started. So, yeah, when you want to if you're trying to understand how much food is enough, because I wasn't very good at tracking things, especially then. I don't think I tracked my food until I had trained for a couple of years.
Right.
But I remember there was a challenge in understanding how much is enough and how full I needed to be, because I would fill up really fast because I was a little guy. And I had to learn that I needed to eat to the point of fullness and then a little past it. And I needed to be full all the time for a little while in order to get enough calories in. So, yeah, it was useful to have the scale to know that I was moving up, until I got to like 165, 170, 175 range. And then from then on, I don't remember weighing myself a whole lot after that. I just noticed that, over the weeks, it's like all of a sudden it's like my squat was going up, my deadlift was going up, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, I weigh 183 now. No, and now I'm 188, and now I'm, 203.
Yeah, I don't.
But that happened over a long period of time. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really weigh myself when I'm trying to build. I just pay attention. Am I recovering? Am I getting my lifts? If I'm sleeping enough, everything else is lined up. I say, okay, well, let's try to shovel some more food down and see what happens. It doesn't have the same effect now as it used to because I've become more advanced and the improvements happen over a longer timeline. But, when you're a novice, things are happening quickly. So, if you're eating enough food and you're making your lifts, you're probably going to gain some muscle. But the metric to building muscle is the weight on the bar. And you shouldn't really look at this endeavor as moving the scale. The scale will move as a result of you lifting heavier and eating more to lift heavier. So that's what you want to look at. Am I lifting heavier? Yes or no? No, I'm not recovering. Okay, more food. Well, more food's going to move the scale. Don't worry about what you weigh. Worry about what you lift,
Yeah.
And use food and sleep and any other recovery tool you have in your toolbox to facilitate that and let the scale do what it does, just kind of like how Trent just explained.
Yeah, right. And, this is going back to the measurement thing, measuring your body parts, like measuring your chest, measuring your hips, your quads. That can be really useful to track progress too for the more advanced lifter, let's say like an intermediate. So when you've gotten past the novice stage, all of a sudden, you got to do a lot more work to get to set weekly PRs. And very quickly, those weekly PRs become bi-weekly PRs. And then not long after that, monthly. And so during that time period, you start, most people are going to have to go through a phase where they're doing a lot more volume on their upper body in particular in order to get their lifts to move. And, at that point, lifts like the press, they may not move very much. So it's hard to get excited about, doing 5 sets of 5 or, 8s or whatever you're doing to get your volume in that point. But it's fun if you measure your chest and your biceps, and it's kind of hard to measure the deltoids, but you'll know it when you put on a t-shirt. You notice all of a sudden after doing that for a few months, you're like, oh man, my t-shirts are fitting tighter. My chest is getting bigger. So that can be a nice way to track your progress there, because there is a phase as an intermediate lifter, if you get to that point, where you your lifts, especially in the upper body, just aren't going to move very much until you put on a significant amount of muscle mass in your upper body. And we see this all the time with people who are coming out of the novice period, the novice phase, and doing the starting strength model, because it is so squat and deadlift dominant. It's very posterior chain dominant. So you get the tauntaun effect.
Yep.
Right? The guys, and usually it's the guys who have neglected their chins along the way, too.
Oh, yeah. They skip their chins. They sandbag the deadlift.
Right.
And they try to go up by 5 to 10 pounds on the bench.
Yeah, exactly. So, there's going to be a period of time that that bench is not going to move, that press is not going to move until you put on the muscle mass. So, if you get motivated by PRs, it's fun to watch the tape go up on your chest over those several months that you're just accumulating volume.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So I want to go back to the point that I put on the table earlier about, I think some people actually do want to see a certain number on the scale. And this one kind of baffles me, I have to be honest.
Oh, yeah. It's like,
I run into a lot of people who have this idea, and it tends to be people especially people in their 30s and up. They'll have this target weight in their head. They're like, I just have to weigh 175.
Yeah.
and it, it's just sort of like, man, where'd you come up with that?
Right.
Where did the 175 come from? Is that what you weighed in high school? Is that what you weighed in college? Is that what you weighed when you played, football or whatever it is? Maybe that's what it is sometimes. But sometimes it's not any of those things even. It's not like it's some number that they used to be. It's just some number that they think they should be, right?
For whatever reason, yeah.
For whatever reason. And it oftentimes is guys who are I'll meet guys who are 5'11", 6 foot, and they're like, yeah, man, I just got to weigh 175. And they're like, well, what do you weigh right now? Oh, I'm 235. You're like, what? How did you think that was a reasonable body weight?
Yeah, where does 60 pounds of weight loss come from?
Yeah, right, yeah. Maybe they just looked up their favorite CrossFitter, and they're like, well, this guy weighs 175.
Well, we've talked about this in other episodes. The 155 to 175 pound fitness model has become the sine qua non in the fitness community. So everybody thinks they need to be light and lean, long and lean, blah, 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 blah. It's all bullshit.
I want those long muscles.
Yeah.
How do you train for that?
Yeah. And it's like, dude, you don't need to do that. I get down to about that size pretty easy. But I'm built pretty small,
Yeah.
A lot of guys, when I'm quote unquote heavier, right? 190 to 195, I'm still wearing 32-inch pants comfortably,
Yeah. Right.
I'm just not a big dude, So there you have it. But when I'm working with clients, I see a lot of guys that will weigh what I weigh, let's say a 190-pound guy. I see a lot of 38, 39, 37,
Mm-hmm. Right.
Sometimes 40, at that body weight for height, and, to get down to, 30-inch waist, 9 inches of waist, I don't know if we need to do that. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
So the 235-pound guy with a 42-inch waist or 43-inch waist, sure, if he wants to have abs or whatever, he might have to be very light. I mean, in quote-unquote natural bodybuilding, which you should just say as natural as can be, right? It means they're not taking some stuff, I guess.
That's
I don't know
jumbo shrimp.
Well, we
natural
know
bodybuilding.
We know they're on less shit because they weigh less,
Well, sure. Yeah. Yeah.
And the largest division, at least this was years ago when I read up on it, this may have changed because maybe they got better at hiding the shit they're on, but the largest division in terms of numbers was the 165ers, so there's not a lot of, there are not a lot of 200 plus guys that are naturally jacked or, have gotten jacked to that point through lifting that are competing in that sport. I think they obviously exist. We've seen them, Carl's a big fucking guy,
Right. Yep.
But a lot of the guys, they think that shit's silly. They're not going to do that. Guys that can probably be competitive in that are probably just not going to do that. But I think also too, 200 plus pound jacked guys are genetic outliers. So if you got big sample of men and had everybody get down to 5% body fat, which is what these guys do, I think you'd have very few that are 200 plus and probably very few that are 130.
Yeah, right.
So I think the big pool would be somewhere in the middle, which is that 165, 155 to 175 pound ripped guy. Now, again, we deal in strength here. We're not bodybuilding coaches. We're just kind of articulating that these body weights are kind of arbitrary and unreasonable for a lot of people. Like,
yeah,
if I just, it's not very hard for me to get under 180. But again, I'm not a big person. Most people that I deal with, it's hard to get down there, to get below 180. It's skinny for a lot of guys,
Right. Yeah, you have you just have a smaller skeleton.
Yeah, and these guys that are 155 to 175 in bodybuilding, they're also shorter than I am. I'm 5'9",
Yeah, right. Yeah, like it's interesting. Like you and I mean, you're definitely leaner than I am, but I naturally hang around the kind of low 190s, and heavy for me is being 200 to 210. And 210, I have been heavier than that, but that was quite heavy for me. But yeah, 200, 205, that would be pretty heavy for me. But we're pretty similar in size, but I think I just have a slightly denser build and a bigger skeleton. You can really see this when you mentioned our friend Carl, who's he's 5'11", I think. He's not quite 6 foot, and he's probably what is he normally 240, 250?
Yeah, so like 240. Last I talked to him, when I got him very lean at 13% body fat, which is pretty lean, people. You have visible abs under 15% if you're a lifter. That's something. Oh yeah, that's something I've also learned. Yeah, 10% body fat or less means you're not training.
Right.
If you're a trained man and you actually take your body fat down, you get visible abs and some vascularity and muscle definition. When you get below 15%, that's what I've noticed. Assuming a normal distribution, some people might have all their body fat in their stomach, so there's outliers. But assuming your body fat's fairly evenly distributed, or your gut starts to get really small under 20%. Like in my experience, you break 15%, you're seeing some definition.
Right.
This 10% shit is nonsense. It's based off of either guys who aren't really training and aren't that strong, or they're using skin folds and getting an underestimation.
Right. Yeah.
But I digress. So when Carl was 13% body fat or close to 12, he was 215.
Okay. Yeah. Right. He's an outlier.
That's a pretty big dude. That means if I got him into single digits bodybuilder territory, he'd be around 200 pounds at 5'11".
Right. And I believe it. So when you see Carl, his joints are huge. Like his elbow joint is the size of my knee joint.
Yeah.
This is also the reason, part of the reason that Carl benches like 450 plus, in his late 40s. Right. So
yeah, he got 470, man. When I was with him, 475, I think.
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. He's still benching in the sort of like the 430, 450 kind of range. Yeah. But yeah, he's PR'd even higher than that. But yeah, so the guy's got huge joints. He's just got a big giant skeleton and he's heavily muscled. He's got a big old Neanderthal forehead too. Sorry about that, Carl. He's not listening, I don't think.
I don't think he listens to me anymore.
He's not a fan. He's not a fan.
No.
But he illustrates the point, right? That a guy like Carl is always going to be a heavy, dense guy. Even if he didn't train, he would be like that because that's just his genetic predisposition. And then he trains, and he's a guy that puts on muscle mass very easily. So his end of the scale is going to be much higher versus someone like you that's just not built as densely. So I find that like usually guys can come around to this once they start to understand the idea of like muscle mass and body fat percentage being really a function of muscle mass. Mm-hmm. I find that it's a harder conversation with women, and in particular larger women, and I'm talking about larger as in like over 5'7", taller women. a lot of times, I know a lot of women who are, and not even 5'7", they might even be like 5'4", 5'5", 5'6", that are very muscular and strong lifters that weigh over 200 pounds.
Oh, yeah.
They weigh 200 plus. And you know what? They're not fat. They look great.
Yeah.
They're just strong, developed lifters, and they weigh more than 200 pounds. But that's a huge deal, I think, for a lot of women. The fact that the scale says 200 is just absolutely just unforgivable.
I had a girl, and I sent her to Carl, and she was 220 at 5'9", and
yeah.
She looked. I mean, I didn't think she was 220. No way. And I had a colleague, my girlfriend. She's also a dietitian, and look at the progress photos, and I'm like, what do you think this person weighs? And they all guessed like 165 to 185. She was 220.
Yeah.
And she's 5'9", and she was a lifter. That density moves the number.
Exactly.
But the taller you get, the higher the number is going to be, and sometimes that messes with people psychologically.
Right, right.
I had a girl once, real strong. She was 5 feet, and I met her. She's about 112, but she was, she's normally around 120. But I met her around 112.
So 5 foot flat.
Yeah, 5 foot flat.
Okay.
And she had, just moved here, was a little more active and not eating as much, and was 112. And then we pushed her body weight up, not intentionally. She just started training. The training drove the hunger, and the need to recover drove the need for food, and she didn't have body image issues,
Yeah.
So she didn't really think about it. She just ate more, And she pushed her weight up to, I think, about 120 to 125, and, squatted 250, pulled close to 300, and
that's fantastic.
Pressed 110 and benched 140, I want to say.
That's really good at 5 foot.
Yeah, did like 16 or 17 chin-ups in a row. So, you couldn't tell she weighed that much. You could tell she was dense, so she'd get questions about whether she was a CrossFitter,
Right.
But, I had another girl. She was 5'8", 145 pounds, and vascular and ripped. I think she was under-eating at the time, but
yeah,
she was squatting 3, pulling over 4, and pressed, I think, body weight,
Yeah,
or close.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I think I know who you're talking about. I think I competed with her at a strength lifting meet years ago. Yeah.
You were in Oakland? I don't remember seeing you there, but yeah. Yeah, that was her. Yeah, she was strong, man.
She's so strong.
Yeah.
She was built to deadlift, too. Real long arms.
Oh, yeah. She pulled 405 in the gym, and, man, she had 420 one day. But
wow. Yeah, that's amazing.
I had a nail polish incident. She had slick nail polish and it kept missing her opener. Then her now husband carved some lines in her thumbnail, and then she was able to get the third attempt.
Oh, for the hook grip.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
She got the third attempt fine. She had to like cut up her thumbnail. I should have taken her to the warm-up room and had her keep going up so we can see where the hell she was at, because I'm pretty sure she had like 420 in her that day.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, she was, I think she's gained some weight since, but even at like 155, 5'8", you're not going to be able to tell that. She was pretty lean.
Yeah,
she was
very lean, very lean.
She was about 144 to 148, and, she looked pretty lean. So these numbers don't really mean anything. That's the whole point, and you can't, you can't out-train your genetics. You can't out-starve your genetics either. I have other people that, have another lady, 5'2", about 115-ish, and lifter, and tends to store body fat in the midsection. So
right.
Yep. Complains about it. And I've dealt with this with another lady. She was 5'8", 140, small frame, kind of built like me, but female.
Mm-hmm.
And got her strong, everything filled out, but focused on the damn muffin top. It's like,
right.
I can't fix that. And then, calories get low. Nobody likes that. And she was old enough to know it's not sustainable.
Right.
So I'm like, so what do you want me to do? There's nothing I can do about that. I could starve you out and make it go down. It will go down if you starve enough, but how are you going to sustain that, right? So you have one option. You have two options. You either forget about it and get over it, or you get liposuction, or whatever surgeries they have for that shit. I believe it's liposuction is the most popular one that people use to remove fat from a region. You can't spot reduce through diet and exercise.
Right.
And for those of you not familiar with that term, because it's a dated term, I don't hear it so much anymore. Spot reduction means that you can target a certain area of your body and lose body fat from that area alone. You can't do that with diet and exercise.
Doesn't happen.
You can train and fill out muscle in that area, which spreads out fat and makes you look different, but you don't lose the body fat off that area doing that. And, most of the time it's abs that people are talking about. So your abs don't grow that much. So my problem was I used to think I had fat arms. Really, I just wasn't pressing, right?
Right.
I started pressing, my delts got bigger, and I had deltoid definition without any loss of body fat. So, that happens. Typically doesn't happen in the midsection because we tend to store more fat there, especially men. But, I had these women, muffin top. I'm like, well, you got a few options, stage competitors in these women's divisions. Some of them do, go and get plastic surgery, either liposuction or breast implants, to throw off the ratios,
to give the visual effect of looking trimmer.
Typically, I'm sure some women want big pecs, but it doesn't tend to be popular with females, as it is with men. Our pecs get bigger, and we can offset the abdominal fat with bigger pecs, because your pecs lead, as John Musser said, your pecs lead you in the room that you're probably not fat, as a guy. And I'd say that's largely true. If your pecs are ahead of your gut, provided they're not sagging down, you're probably in pretty good shape. So some women go and get surgery. That's an option. That's not one that I tend to recommend. I'm not a surgeon. I'm not a Hollywood plastic surgeon. That's not what we do here. I try to improve your body composition through diet and exercise, but I'm just highlighting that you can't do anything about a muffin top with diet and exercise. You can make it less of a muffin top by training, but if you store fat there and it tends to stay there, even with calorie restriction, the only way out of that is surgery.
Right.
Or starvation, which is very short-lived.
I see this a lot too with with some women who complain about the chicken wings, and on the basically a little bit of body fat, where their triceps are.
Oh yeah, I heard one girl called it math teacher arms.
Math teacher,
and they're writing on the chalkboard apparently.
Right, you see the jiggle.
Yeah,
and you're like, well,
oh fuck! Now we just made a bunch of math teachers insecure.
No, I'm sorry, math teachers, but I'm not sorry.
I
hated math class in
client
public school.
Female client said it. You can blame her.
But and the thing the thing there too is a lot of times, the women that I've heard complain about this, they don't have much body fat there. It's not that they have that much body fat; they just don't have any triceps. It's well, if you actually, if you lifted weights and you got some triceps, then that area would look great. When it jiggled, it would jiggle with muscle, not with loose skin.
And nobody would notice. Nobody noticed the fat when you're lifting.
No, nobody. So I I just want to point that out because that's a tough one, man. Is that people get stuck on these numbers on the scale that are completely arbitrary, and they don't mean anything because they have nothing to do really with your body composition. They have something to do with it's related, but there's so many other factors that go into it that we just laid out that it's not really relevant, right?
No.
If I was to listen to your podcast and be like, oh man, well Santana said he gets lean at 173, so I need to weigh 173. It doesn't work. We're not the same people.
No.
We don't have the same genetics, even though we're about the same height. We're pretty close.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter. It doesn't work. At 173, I would just be a skinny, weak dude.
Yeah, and it's interesting. We're comparable in strength too.
Yeah, right. That's especially if you are taller, if you're at the tall end of the scale, especially for your sex, then just understand that your numbers are not going to look like the average person, right? If you're female and you're 6 foot tall, you're an outlier in terms of height, so that means that your body weight's going to be an outlier too.
Absolutely.
And the same thing, if you're a dude and you're 6'5", you're an outlier in terms of height. So
absolutely,
you cannot expect to have the same waist and body weight as a bunch of other guys who are more average, around 5'8", 5'10".
Yeah, there's so much variability with this stuff, and I just don't think it gets enough appreciation. But we're just sharing information. A lot of this stuff is emotional and behavioral, and
right.
Sociological. People are. If you're in an environment where everybody wants to be skinny, like you live in Los Angeles, I can't help that. I lived there too. I lived there at one point, and I weighed less, at the time, because I wasn't really training that hard. And I started to at the end. And, I felt pretty big around a bunch of skinny people, and I'm not a big guy, and this was when I put on the weight, when I did go mad and push my weight up, etc. So, I noticed that too, when people live in an environment where others look a certain way, and they don't look that way, they start to develop, these ideas about how they look, like if you live around a bunch of skinny people and you're a jacked person, then you start to think, oh, I look like a dumb meathead,
Right.
Or
yeah.
if you live around a bunch of fat people, like if you live around larger people and you tend to be a smaller person, you feel too skinny, So there's a lot of that to factor in. We're not ignoring that. That exists, and it's a whole nother can of worms to deal with.
How do you think Hafthor Bjornsson's wife feels?
Oh fuck!
Have you ever seen her?
Exactly.
So if you don't know, Hafthor Bjornsson, he's a multiple-time world's strongest man. He's retired from strongman at the moment, but he was like what 6'10", I think, 6'9", 6'10".
Yeah, it was close to 6'9". It was 450 or something.
450, yeah, at competition weight, and he was like, he wouldn't have abs at 450, but like in his off season, he would get a little leaner. Let's say like down to 420.
Yeah, he would lean up, 400.
and then he would have abs. And his wife is like, I don't even know, she's like 5'1" maybe.
It's hilarious.
That's funny. So
yeah, no. So there's all this other shit you got to work through. Obviously, like if a lot of this is existing in your brain, then you have to work on that.
Yeah.
That's not what we do here.
Right. Yeah. One thing I have noticed though is that it really helps when you find, like, this is where I think training in an environment with a bunch of other people that do what you do, like, training with a bunch of other lifters, especially ones that have some experience, like they get it, right? Like lifters understand, right? We all realize like very quickly the iron teaches us our genetic limits pretty quickly. And so we get it, we understand that guy over there that's trying to push his deadlift up, trying to put on a little bit of extra body weight to see if he can squeeze out some more numbers. Like we get what that guy's doing. We don't look over there at that dude and be like, oh, look at the big fat guy.
Right.
So that can help to have, if you've got your crew that gets what you're doing and understands, body types and weights and sort of the, is orienting their life around the results that they're getting in the gym, and on the bar and not around their body composition, it can help a lot. If
Right.
you're around people that sit around at at lunch and every single day they're talking about the new diet that they're on and how many, I lost 2 pounds yesterday. Yeah, it's not a good environment for healthy attitudes.
Yeah, no, that cannot be overstated. I was training around a bunch of big, strong dudes that were competing in powerlifting, and that was all they cared about. And that really wasn't what I was doing. Like I wanted to get stronger. I wanted to hit certain PRs, and I wasn't willing to, kill myself for it. I mean, in one sense, I was. I put in the work, obviously.
Yeah,
I worked hard, showed up. I mean, I've been training for 9 years. I never really took a break. Do what I can. I try to add and I try to progress. So some people would argue that, you're killing yourself, but I wasn't willing to get on drugs is what I'm really trying to say,
Right.
I'm not going to put a bunch of shit in my body just to
or risk injuries even,
or that. Yeah. Like,
there's a line that you could easily dial it up and, and maybe push your numbers a little faster than you do now. But then, maybe you're risking some muscle belly tears or something.
Yeah, no, I was just around a bunch of guys that would do a bunch of volume, did not care about their form, move the weight at all costs, and were probably on a bunch of shit,
Yeah.
I don't know exactly what people were on, so I can't really comment on anybody's, drug use, but I know that, there was a lot of that going on.
Sure.
And I have nothing against it. I just didn't see the purpose for someone in my position. I'm a diet coach, I'm lifting for general health and to get as strong as I can get, And, I don't see the value for somebody in my shoes. If you're a competitor that wants to lift as much as you possibly ever can and are actually trying to be competitive in a federation, then in a powerlifting federation, then you might have to do some things that aren't necessarily safe, just like a baseball player, basketball player, football player. And I'm not just talking about drug use, because you're not supposed to do it in those sports, but we all know they do. But you're pushing your body to its limits, and you're taking risk, and you're compromising things.
Right. And you're organizing your whole life around that training block that you're on,
Yeah. And I do that to some extent, but my workouts, other than Monday, God, I fucking hate the 4-lift workout. Most of the time my workouts are done in an hour. Monday is about 2 hours, because I don't want to go a fourth day.
Yeah, sure.
But like these guys will work out 4 or 5 days a week for 2 hours, sometimes 3, sometimes 2 a days, And that's not what I was doing. So, the environment wasn't the greatest, and, my gym now, because I own it, it's a lot better. I get a lot of people that are going in there because, yes, they want to add, and a lot of them do show up consistently, but, they're not chasing the extremes. And, I think I like that. I like training around my members. They're fun people. They're good people, but, they're not chasing the extremes, and I wasn't chasing the extremes. I wanted to put on as much muscle as I could. I wasn't willing to take steroids for that, because I wasn't doing it for bodybuilding. I just wanted to get bigger. I desire to get bigger. I'm a small dude, it's a common thing, and I wanted to figure out how that was done. And what I learned is it takes a very long time, and the longer you do it, the smaller the return on investment. You put in a whole bunch of time for a little bit of result, and that's kind of where I'm at now. But the point is that the lifting aspect to it is I'm surrounded by people that, they want their backs to stop hurting. They want to not have a gut. Right. And they want to lift correctly so they don't get hurt. And they want to add weight to the bar, obviously, but it's not add weight to the bar at all costs. That's not really my priority, So the reason I'm bringing this up is because, the environment's huge. If you're at a Globo gym where, let's face it, a bunch of people are sauced up, want to look at themselves in the mirror and pick up, pick up a mate,
Yep.
And, a lot of the time it's not a social environment. If somebody's talking to you, they, are probably asking you out, or, asking to work in or something like that. It's not a very social environment. It's all, it's very
They
vain.
take their earbuds out just to say, like, hey man, are you going to be there?
You're going to be
for
there
a few more minutes?
Or they go up to the young girl and say, hey, can you be in my Instagram video for my website,
Is that how they do it nowadays?
Apparently, yeah. I just heard that from, I have an intern now at the gym, and she was telling me that she hates Globo gyms, and she tells me stories here and there because she still has to go to one. And that was one that she told me that the guy, just random dudes will walk up and say, hey, can I get a video of you for my website or for my Instagram page? And I'm like, yeah, it's no surprise. But for the most part, you're going to these gyms, nobody talks to each other. They're wearing headphones. They're all looking at themselves in the mirror, have no idea what's going on with anybody else. Form is non-existent. Nobody cares about technique because it's all about feeling a certain way and looking a certain way.
Right.
So, if that's what you're about, might be the right environment. A lot of people, there are a lot of people that go to these places. Then there's guys that just go in there because it's convenient. They want to do their little circuit, hop on the treadmill for 20 to 30 minutes and then go to work, and not be bothered, so that there's a market for this. But then you go to a powerlifting gym and everybody wants to lift as heavy as possible. They all have their own ideas about what good technique is, and they're not open to other people's ideas about that unless you're stronger than them. You have you have to be stronger than them to be entitled to an opinion.
Yeah.
And then, there's bodybuilding gyms, which is, basically the Globo gym, upgraded, times 2, right?
Right, yeah.
And everybody's just, there to
place where you can work out for 3 hours.
Yeah, it's all about, it's all about chasing the pump, looking a certain way, and, you're probably willing to take a bunch of drugs to do that,
Yeah, sure.
My gym is none of that, we're there to get stronger, move better, feel better, and, look better within. Nobody's there to chase the extremes,
Right. Yep. And there's another element of that too. And I'll say this as my last point. Training, it can be fun too, and that's actually an important element of training that gets lost sometimes, especially when you've been doing this for a while. Like when you're a novice, training is not that fun. No. It's not even that fun as an early intermediate lifter, but at some point, if you're 2, 3, 4 years into this or more, 9 years into this, training should be fun. Right. So yeah, you don't necessarily have to, unless chasing the extreme is fun for you.
Yeah.
Some people are like that. Some people they get a kick out of chasing the numbers. That's cool. Whatever. That's fine. But if you're not that way, then it's okay to not do that and do some fun stuff too, along with the productive training. That's fine. That's fine. So anyway, I think that's just to say that, change your environment. If you're struggling with this, then, maybe you just need to get some new friends.
Yeah. That's essentially what we're saying.
Right.
Get a different gym, get some new friends. No, I mean, that's kind of what I was getting at. If you are chasing the extremes, and Rips talked about this, and this was one of the reasons that I did train at a training gym was I was at a seminar and Steph was saying, compete in a meet, it gives you something to work for, I'm like, well,
sure.
I haven't really done sports since high school swimming, and I enjoyed the competition, so I'd try it out, But I watched a podcast or a video, I watched a YouTube video Rip made with Marty Gallagher a while back, and they were talking about how, Rip's just like, where did I go wrong? I only squatted 630, and these other guys were squatting, 700-800-pound squats, like it's no big deal, and blah, blah, blah. And then Marty's like, well, you didn't do too bad training in a vacuum,
Right.
And he's like, when you're squatting 600 and everybody else is squatting 315, that's a whole lot less incentive than you can't go on the big man platform unless you have at least an 8 squat.
Right.
That's baseline,
right. Yeah.
And I watched that. It was very motivating at the time. I just got into this type of lifting, and there were numbers I wanted. I wanted to squat I wanted to deadlift 500 pounds. I wanted to squat 405, but I picked up the squat easier than most. I wasn't perfect at it by any means. I did hurt myself my first year 2 times on 2 separate occasions. So learning to squat correctly was a bit of a challenge, but so I figured that out. But I came in with a below parallel squat of 315, just me fucking around and making sure I squatted in all my leg workouts,
Yeah.
And that's not terrible compared to a lot of what we see, right? But I mean, obviously by powerlifting standards, these, what was I, 165 at the time? These buck 65-pound guys, they'll squat 500-600 pounds sometimes, the top guys, So, 315, it's not impressive by powerlifting standards, but by personal training client standards, people that hire us, it's pretty good, out the gate.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And it was clean. It was below parallel. It's on Facebook, buried there somewhere, 2013. And the thing was, it was incorrect. So, when I kept squatting that way, I eventually tore an adductor. Then I learned how to do it correctly. And then I got form creep when it got heavy. And then I tore the other one. And then eventually I figured it out. And I haven't been, knock on wood, hurt like that since. But my point was that I did start training in a powerlifting gym because I immersed myself in that environment because I was around guys that were, repping out, 405 on the squat. They were squatting over 5 at meets, some over 6. I saw 600-plus pound squats at these gyms I went to. And occasionally you'd have a guy that came in and did 7. That was very rare, but I witnessed a 700-pound squat in person, which was pretty cool. And most of the guys were repping out, deadlifts in the 400s, which for me was heavy at the time, and some in the 500s. There was a lot of 600, 700 deadlifters at these lifting gyms. That's actually more common than a 600-plus squatter, And, the benches didn't really, I didn't care about the bench that much, and nobody pressed, so I was kind of on my own in the press. I probably had one of the strongest presses there, to be honest. There were guys that bench like 365, and I was pressing more than them.
Yeah, right.
But it was mainly the squat and the deadlift. So just being around guys that were repping out my max, made me less scared of it, And
yeah.
And it, like, the phrase that was used in that video that I watched was, it drags your game up. When you're around people that are doing more than you're doing, and you have goals in mind, like measurable goals, like you care about wanting to get from point A to point B, then you want to be around people that are outperforming you. That will drag your game up.
I've had this experience in music, and it's 100% applicable to the gym too. That the times that I've played the best and I've improved in my musicianship the best is when I've been in bands or been in situations where I'm the worst guy in the room.
Yep.
Because pretty quickly you're going to figure out a way to be able to hang at least with everyone else and not be the weakest link,
Yep.
And and that's playing in an ensemble, right, where everyone's working together. It's a little bit more of a solo pursuit when you're in the gym, but the same effect happens for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
And powerlifting is one of those sports too where there's a lot of camaraderie. People are encouraging you to do better.
For sure.
And nobody makes fun of the person who's squatting 135. Nobody does that. That's just not how it is. Different environment than a commercial gym. But if you are chasing a result that is extreme, even for you, like for me, I wanted a 500 deadlift. That's not an extreme deadlift, and I weighed at my lowest end, I was 165. My highest end, I was 195. So, guys in those weight classes, like, 500 is not even baseline, like the top guys, if you start going to lifting meets, you got 165 pound guys that are pulling 6, over 6. It's not, these guys don't grow off trees. You don't see them in every gym, and you don't necessarily see them in every meet, but you go pull up meet results from USA Powerlifting, and you're going to see 600-pound deadlifts in the 165-pound class, I'm
going to have to send you a video of, I don't know this guy's name. I'm going to have to look it up. But there's a video of a guy he's like a clone of Lamar Gant.
Okay. And he's pulling 660.
He's probably not quite. He's creeping up on that number, though. He's a 60-kilo lifter, so he's 132 pounds. Mm-hmm. And he just pulled 629, I think. Mm-hmm. Which is insane. It's like That's almost a 5 times body weight.
Yeah. So Lamar Gant's a power lifter in the 1980s. He's still around. He's still alive. I don't know if I don't think he trains anymore. At least not like that. The interviews I've seen, he doesn't. I didn't get the impression that he's still hitting it hard.
Right.
But he's probably in his 60s now, if I had to guess. And he was, 132, but his arms were so long that his deadlift would lock out at his kneecaps.
Yeah, right.
So at 132, he pulled like in the mid 6s.
Yeah, it was crazy. Yeah, I think you're right. Somewhere around 660 was his all-time PR, which is just crazy. Yeah, I mean, he might arguably be the greatest powerlifter of all time.
Oh,
certainly
5 times body weight deadlift. I mean, that's 60 kilos pulling 300 kilos. 5 times body weight deadlift.
Yeah. But anyway, I digress. But yeah. Anyway, so there's another guy out there who's built very similar. He's basically no torso, probably some severe scoliosis, and very, very long arms for a short body. For short height.
Yeah. Just being in an environment where people are doing what you're trying to do and outperforming you in some sense can be helpful, can be productive, But I think that's really what we're trying to get at is, you want to be in a gym where, everybody's kind of got the same goal and, you kind of fit in, I guess, get in where you fit in, whole Too Short album.
Yeah. Use the right tool for the job.
Yeah.
That means, use the scale like it's meant to be used. Mm-hmm. Use the measuring tape more. Look for long-term progress, not short-term ups and downs, because that's, everything's ups and downs in the short term. But look for long-term trends, and then, use the tool, use the gym for what it's meant to be used for. A Globo gym's a tool too, just like the scale.
Oh yeah,
use it what it's meant for. And and vice versa, the powerlifting gym too. So, all right, well let's sign off for today. Take us away.
All right, yeah, that's a good stopping point. So thank you for tuning in to the Weights and Plates podcast. You can find me at weightsandplates.com or on Instagram at _Robert_Santana. You can find my gym at weights_and_plates, where I'm now finally updating that damn thing.
Nice, excellent. Yeah, you can find me at marmalade_cream on Instagram, and you can also find me jonesbarbellclub.com. I have a new website out that's just kind of has a little bit about my coaching services. I train people in person if you are in the Chattanooga, Tennessee area. I actually had a couple of guys come down from Knoxville or up around that area the other day. So if you're anywhere in the East Tennessee area, you can come and see me at my home gym here in Chattanooga, Tennessee, or I offer online coaching too. So you can reach me through jonesbarbellclub.com. All right, we will talk to you in a couple weeks.